But if you can read Chinese, you can actually search those, and I can't read Chinese, so I did have help on that. The thing about it is that Shanghai was such an international city that there were every language was spoken and printed there, every European language for sure. And so there were newspapers in German, French, Italian, Danish, Russian, populations, communities from every nationality in Shanghai, and English. There were about, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 different English language daily newspapers, magazines, and so forth that are available to find in the libraries in Shanghai. Some are also here in Washington in Library of Congress. But so the stories I relied on from people, I could also kind of reconstruct on a daily basis, because these were daily newspapers, what was going on in what neighborhood, what people, what streets. And so that was something that I did while I was in Shanghai. And also just to walk the streets of Shanghai. Many of you raised your hands. You know that the architecture, the older buildings, if you strip away the new signage and the facades that are put on them, they still are, you know, the old beautiful architecture that it once was, and some have been restored, and so that's what I try to also immerse myself in. And so you had a question.
I can talk forever because I'm actually working on the very same period about the Jewish refugees. So this is a godsend. So I'll focus my question on the story of hope. I was really surprised that there's only one chapter devoted during his wartime years like the others, and his post-war life. I was just wondering why did you pick them, and actually the conversation about cultural clashes. I was actually curious as to why you focused so much on his student networks in the United States, in New York, but you didn't talk so much about, as far as I can get you, the interaction with the settled Chinese in New York. I don't know if that's because the different generations or different languages. Would you talk more about this?
So your question is why I had more about the childhoods of the other three, and then...
Yeah, well, basically, my thought was, why didn't we give more attention to hope, experiences during the war, in the Sino-Japanese War, and what was his network, his relationship like as a student with other Chinese who are already there, who are not students?
So the question is, I'm guessing most of you have not yet read this book, but we have a researcher and a writer here. And so I have 4 characters, one whose name is Ho Chow, and he was a quite brilliant student growing up in Changshu outside, and when the war began to break out with Japan, his family had the decision of, let's flee because all the armies are going to pass through here, and they ended up in Shanghai. And so I have 2 chapters, or 1.5 or something like that, 2 about Ho's childhood, and there's a great gap. And meanwhile, so for those of you who write or whatever, the whole issue is how do you structure a story that will carry and maintain, not just what's happening with each individual, but also what's historically happening around them, that they are all each experiencing. They each experience the occupation, the war, the invasion, and without too much duplication. And so that was one reason. So Ho was this brilliant student, and his life in Shanghai was about going to school and staying out of trouble. This was the main thing. His family was maybe typical in a lot of ways, where Shanghai was such a contested place. If you had any political inclination at all, you could end up beheaded with your head on a lamppost. And that's the kind of place it was, because it was under Japanese occupation. So if you were a resistor in any way, you and your whole family could get shot and killed on the spot, or sent to one of the torture chambers, which one of my other characters, his father ran the torture chamber and he was a collaborator. So this son, his story about what it was like being a child of a collaborator, which, of course, because Japan lost the war, their fortunes completely turned around with the loss of the war. So, so partly, Ho went to school and back for a long time. That's all he did. And so that doesn't become a very, I mean, I actually tried to have chapters about that, but it's not fascinating. And so the parts of telling Ho's, each person, each individual was also a vehicle to say what was happening to them in relation to what was going on historically around them. So that's why. And in your question, what's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah is doing research on the Jewish community of Shanghai, which there was a 20 to 23,000 Ashkenazi Jews who had escaped Eastern Europe, escaped the Holocaust and Hitler. And they got on ships, and as I was saying, refugees of any time, of any exodus, are not welcome wherever they go. And so they were denied disembarkation anywhere in the Americas, anywhere in North America. The United States would not accept this Jewish community that was just, fleeing the Holocaust. Europe, they could not land. Africa, they ended up in Shanghai because it was the port of last resort. Shanghai admitted these 20,000 Ashkenazi Jews. And this was during the period, just before, actually, the Japanese occupation of the international settlements. But they ended up being sequestered in the equivalent of a shtetl in Shanghai, and for a while they were worried that there was going to be the final solution, that that's what Japan would do, because the Nazis in Shanghai were pressing for this. And there are stories about that the Japanese understood that they were not Aryans, and that Hitler really liked Aryans, and so that even though they were implored on to to kill the Jews that were in Shanghai, they did not do that. But instead, what they did was they forced them all to live in the equivalent of a ghetto. So this is an important area of study. I'm glad you're doing that. But you will also run into these questions of how to structure a story and a book if you're doing it through the people's stories. The thing about Ho, even though he was an engineer, he was a scientist. In the personality of a scientist, he was not super emotional. When I would ask him, what was it like going to school with Japanese sentries everywhere? And he would say, well, it was okay. However, the thing about Ho was when he made it to the United States, he kept a journal. He kept letters, correspondence, which he, as an engineer, had saved, scanned, digitized, gave to me. And so they were all in Chinese. So I did, with the research and the assistance I had them translated into English, and they were a treasure trove. They were emotional, what was happening with his family in China, his exchanges with them. He became a student stuck in the United States because, of course, these weren't students who were accepted here as part of, an exodus. They were already here. And when the revolution happened, they couldn't go back. And so also all of their finances ended because the relations, U.S. and China, suddenly the bamboo iron curtain had gone down. So they had no money. And so like students today, they were not allowed to work. And the newspapers here in the U.S. of the time, and in the National Archives, there are letters where people sent appeals to members of Congress and so forth, saying, can't you do something on behalf of these stranded students from China, because they have no way to live, They can't work, they can't afford to rent anything, and they are in dire need. So that went on as a political policy football for quite some time, because they really didn't want these, the Exclusion Act, they didn't want these students here, but they also didn't want to send them back, because many of them were highly educated, and especially those in technical fields. They let the ones who majored in English and history go back. The ones who majored in, chemistry, physics, engineering, they totally refused to let you go. So Ho was one of those people, and he had the incredible gift of keeping those letters. And you'll see just the accounts of his family and what they were going through, and the panic that all of these students, and see, Kwok was one of those students too, who was here, who was stranded. So, so those are great questions. How are we doing?
Every time you tell stories, you unveil, you take off a layer, and there's another story, and there's another story. And all of you guys have these wonderful stories. And I want to thank Helen for having shared a portion of her stories with us, which is obviously opening up other people's stories. And what we like to do in our Talk Story series is always open up a period in which people can just mingle around, share with each other things. Helen, also, I appreciate the standing around for an hour or so, but I hope that you can also make your way to a back bar table and help with maybe signs of books that people, and you guys got to read this. You got to read the book, right? Yes, so let's thank Helen. So enjoy yourself. Really, the things that we're going to be doing